You know, I'm not on the Navajo reservation because I love Navajo people. And I love Navajo people. Glad to have Hannah here tonight, one of our friends from the reservation. Her dad's in Shiprock. I love Navajo people. That's not why I'm there. There's been some days when I didn't really love Navajo people. There's days when and I remember standing in Sunday school one day and a fella's sitting there in Sunday school and I don't even remember what I was teaching on. But a demon got inside of him and he stood up and he began to scream and run toward me and try to grab my throat. Wanted to choke me. He said, I'm going to kill you. And a bunch of our men jumped out, tackled him in the aisle, began to scuffle around. We'd had our roads washed out the night before, all the dirt roads. So I called up the police department. I said, we need an officer over here. Somebody was trying to choke me. Who is this? This is Pastor Joel Haynes from Salt Rock Baptist Church. They said, well, the roads are washed out. We won't be able to get anybody there for a couple of hours. And I said, well, we're just going to throw them off the property then. And they said, okay, be careful. You know, on that day, I wasn't loving Navajo people too much. I remember one night, my wife called me and she said, I think some teenagers vandalized our house. I said, you think so? She says, yeah, I'm not sure who it is, but they vandalized our house. Started happening about once a month. It happened in the wee hours, 2 and 3 in the morning, always on a Saturday night, in the wee hours of a Sunday morning, 2 and 3 in the morning. And I remember I said, man, Lord, just let it happen when I'm home. Let it happen when I'm home. And I remember one time it did, and he must have slept in because it was at 5 a.m. And a fella had 2 5-gallon buckets of urine that he had been saving up for a month. And he came and he tossed it on our windows and he tossed it on our doors and he was writing things on the side of the wall. And as soon as we heard him scurrying around, my wife said, he's here. I began to get up, and modesty wasn't even an issue at this point. We're going to run out and take him on, and whatever we got on, found him outside and began to chase him, and I heard him yelling, go back to England, Columbus. I thought, Columbus wasn't even English. Bless his heart. We heard his voice, and my wife's over there. She's videoing the thing, and she said, I know who it is. I said, who is it? She said, it's Mike. If your name's Mike, I know it wasn't you. Different Mike. She said, it's Mike. And I said, I know where Mike lives. And so I chased him 2 acres across our property barefoot with a baseball bat in my hand. When I came back and she told me it was Mike, I said, give me the keys. She said, you be careful. I grabbed my 12-gauge shotgun and I jumped in that vehicle and I got to Mike's house before he did. And I'm waiting there, baby. And he comes up whistling a little tune. And I said, Mike! And as soon as he saw me, he began to scream. He threw down those buckets and he ran after me. And I gave it a good old ka-ka-chug. Boom! He stopped dead in his tracks and I said, I love you and I'd like you to get saved, but I'll send you to meet the devil today. We sat there yelling at each other while he made a circle around me to get into the woods. We had called the cops. 45 minutes, police officers never came. On that day, wasn't loving Navajo people too much. Wasn't loving them too much. Busting our windows. Wasn't loving them too much. Calling my wife and kids' names. You say, well, why'd you stay? Because the reason you're faithful is not because of the people you're serving. It's not for the people you're serving. You say, why do you go soul winning? And why do you give to missions? Come on, sometimes you soul win and you witness to somebody and they hug you just long enough to dust off a clean place on your back to shove a knife. Sometimes you pour into somebody and you love on them and you try to disciple them, and cold turkey, man, they just disappear and quit coming to church. You know what the devil does? He jumps on your shoulder and says, you're such a fool. Why'd you even waste the time to go out there and knock on that door? Why'd you even waste the time to try to sit across from him and give him the Bible? You know what'll happen? Sometimes you'll give to missions, and you know what'll happen? Sometimes missionaries mess up. Sometimes they blow it on the field and they have to be pulled off. Brother leader does his diligence to make sure that you bring in top quality missionaries, except for the Haynes family, amen? But he does his diligence to make sure that bring in good missionaries, but even then, even the best of us are susceptible to falling and failing and doing something wrong. You know what the devil will do when you hear about your favorite missionary quitting or coming off the field? Devil will hop on your shoulder and say, what a fool, you gave all that money and you were faithful and they weren't. You're a fool. You know what I do when everyone else seems to fail and when everybody else, come on, you brought your family to church and look at the way your kids treat you. You loved your wife, you loved your husband, and look at the way they've treated you. You know what you got to do, folks? You've got to look and remember why you're being faithful in the first place. You've got to look to the Lord and say, I knocked that door because I love Jesus. And I sat and discipled that person because I love Jesus. And when I gave that missions, I put it into the nail-scarred hands of Jesus. And whatever everybody else decides to do, and no matter how foolish I look, I've got a reason to be faithful. My faithfulness matters because it matters to Him. And that's who I'll stand before someday. So church family, don't get discouraged. Don't be weary in well-doing. Keep knocking the doors. Keep soul winning. Keep coming to every service. Every time the doors are open, keep giving that missions commitment that you gave today. And don't listen to the naysayers, because there's a God in heaven who's keeping track. And He'll remember your faithfulness. Let's stand together.